What is good, rookies? We're going to fly through this with as much information and directness as we can. Certainly because I'm unsure of my trades, and I want to try and cover off a few different trade targets depending on your layout of teams. Some target players to bring in and some target players to trade out. So for the target players to trade out, we've got a few standout players that we've come up from this round. Now, Graham from the Suns, if he does not get named, he's probably a good trade out. We've got Reed on our team here as well. He's got a very high break even at 134. Can produce high numbers, but against Melbourne, probably unlikely. We have Fife, who has a high break even as well. So you are pretty much looking at Reed, Fife, Graham, and House. So you get just under 4. He's got a break even of 150. This is potentially good for us as a non-owner because given the lack of options in the forward line, he could be a good F6 potentially. Or if we don't really like the lookie options, like rookie-wise, I think Wilson is proving himself to be a keeper, so I'd be more than happy to slot him in at F6 for the rest of the season if he maintains this. So we've got Reed as an option, you've got Graham as an option, we have Howes as an option. Now he's got a break even of 65. Does have the ability in some cases to push out higher scores. It is a consideration that they're playing West Coast, who give out, they just don't really do well against defenders. So there is a chance that Howes actually breaks this and still has some more money to make. However, even if he hits his projected and he's losing cash, it's not like a must. So if you need to keep him and you want to back him in against West Coast, I don't think that's a bad choice at all. I'm also heavily considering that, but outside of that, we don't have enough cash behind us to trade Reed straight up to someone like a Zorko, for example. So I think like the main trade out targets, and if we look at the trade out so far, this will give you a really good idea. So our trade outs of all coaches got Reed, Roberts if you're still holding him, Graham and Cadman. Now, obviously, if you're still holding like Howes or Massimo, I think they're easy trade out targets, especially if you've got like Zach Williams, even a Tom Powell. These guys are really good trade out targets. I don't think there's any issues trading out any of these players. I think you've got to drop Roberts if you've still got him. I think that you've got to jump ship. But outside of that, like I don't think you can do a bad thing with Reed this week. I think if you hold him, there's a chance he puts up a good score against Melbourne. If you trade him out, you're getting max value. Pretty much, he's made almost 450k, and that's a real easy jump for to someone like Zorko, or an easier jump to like someone like Rankin. So, trade in targets. Depending on your team, I know some people are starting to fill out their back line, their mids. I think everyone's kind of leaving the forward line to last, just because we don't have any like locked in top 6 yet. We've got maybe like a top 3, top 4. But then it's just throwing blind darts at a dartboard to see what happens really, which is concerning. But nonetheless, we move forward. So for our team, for our trade out targets, we're looking at Howes and Reed. They're like the first 2 that need to go. Darcy has earned himself another week. He's still got a break even of 36, which against a tougher side of GWS, he is definitely at chance to just meet that for sure. You got the likes of Whitfield, Taylor. You've got people back there that are just going to cause some issues, especially if he spends some time down the forward line, especially if Briggs moves up and he has to come up against Briggs in some front ruck cover. There are chances he doesn't really do that well, but he's definitely earned enough for one round, one more week. So we're definitely looking at maximizing our value this week and getting rid of Howes and Reed. Now for trading targets, if we go back to have a look at the most traded in from all coaches, we've got Sullivan, Zorko, we've got good old Brucey, even people gone early on Richards, which I think we will save until next week for a downgrade option because we will need one. Great time to get Butters. Ryan, if you desperately need him. Sarong, if you desperately need him. Heaney, Petrarca, and Rankin. So I think this is pretty standard for trade-ins this week. I think a lot of people are looking at like a Merritt or a Butters to really finish their team. You've got all these mids that are currently sitting around that 620 to 630 mark. If you haven't got Sarong and maybe you finish your back line, and you've got the cash to really like get him, I probably would pull the trigger on that. He's coming up against St Kilda, so I think he's going to have a really, really good game. We'll get into our VC and C options later in the week, just because these games on the Sunday and Saturday are going to be really annoying, especially the two main games are both on Sunday, so that's a bit tricky. However, with all that said, trading targets, I would probably go Merritt if you're going to look at anyone. I don't think you can go wrong with Merritt or Butters. I think both of them are great options. You can't really go wrong, especially if that helps finish your midfield. If you're looking at like a Melbourne player for value, I think Ollie is still a really good choice. I still think, again, past the eye test last week, I think he's going to hold form and just do better things, especially coming up against West Coast. So there is a chance he blows out against at least a ton, at least. So we're going to back him in, not with any VC or C options, but we're going to back him in to at least ton up for us. I think he's fighting form, and I think he's just going to do great things for us. So backing him in. Outside of mids, if we're looking at the defense, which is what we're also considering here, because our options are either bring a mid into the back line or the forward line. Now, the value this week, when you really think about it, is in the forward line. You've got Zorko and you've got Rankin that have really like started to show themselves as keeper options in the forward line. Zorko, obviously, there are a few concerns, injury, age, being managed, that sort of thing. A lot of people, myself included, were kind of waiting for later in the season, but he's just at a price and has a really low break even where you kind of can't pass it up given his current form. He does have the bye in 2 weeks, which will give him a rest, so he should be okay. But defense-wise, if we look at our targets of what we could potentially bring in, I've updated some targets down below as well. We've finished our midfield, so we've only got the forward and defensive line. Ruck is pretty easy. We either pick up Marshall or English. I think Marshall's finding his form again, which is amazing. But let's have a look at our defensive options. The Ryan, again, the main one that we don't have. We could spend all the money in the world to get him in this week to get that D1, but I think we wait. If I wasn't going to get him last week, I don't think I'm going to get him this week. I don't think it's worth, even if he does, it's going to be bittersweet if we watch him absolutely smash St Kilda, which is most likely going to happen. But we're also trying to fill out some rookie spots on the field. So I think like the bigger picture is us fielding and trying to upgrade around that and leave space for him around the buys to bring him in. Same can be said about Heaney. Heaney is definitely an option you can look at. But we've got Lyon rocked in at D1, so we know we're going to fill that spot there. So then if we look at our D6 position, who's really putting their hand up for that? Now, again, trade target-wise, Whitfield, I think you can hold off on Whitfield. There's just, I think for mental health reasons, don't get him because he's a bit of a yo-yo. You're going to see some really good games. You're going to see some really bad games. It's really about the usage of the ball when it comes to Whitfield because there is a lot of uncontested points that he gets. If he's just not using it well that night, the points are going to reflect that, which is a bit annoying. Nasiah, good old Naz. He is really looking at buy structure, looking at the price. He's performing much better than Stewart. Now, Stewart, we know, can do well, but he doesn't look like he's given us a reason to pick him this season. Between the concussion protocol, between you got like Holmes and Zach Guthrie as well, now cutting into that rush up from the back where he's not bringing the ball too forward. He's still getting some good kick-ins, Stewart, and he still has the ability to be able to put up some really good scores. We just haven't seen it yet, which is annoying. So, do we look at bringing in Naz, for example? Now, Naz is coming up against Freo, and you could assume that it's going to spend a lot more time in the Freo Ford 50 than it is in St Kilda's. So, he, even by absolutely getting obliterated by Freo, which they probably will, he could probably do a really good score and maintain. His overall average is just sitting under a ton. He's doing okay. Like he's definitely worth thinking about as an option to bring in. I'm definitely considering it. The I think the centre bounce boys really touched this really well tonight on the fact that when Sinclair is playing upfield more and getting more CBAs, Naz has more free reign. When Sinclair is back in the defensive half, he chips into Naz's skill overall points that he can gather. Like he doesn't get as much ball, doesn't get as much control. There's just a lot to consider when it comes to that layout, but it does seem like Sinclair is moving upfield more, and that might be the plan that sticks. So Naz could be a good option. Holmes, again, I think he's a great player. He's a great consistent player, and he's like as a D6 option. He's looking pretty good. Again, it's just the buy structure. Geelong, I really don't want any more teams from round 14 buys in my team. I think we're already struggling in round 14, so I think avoiding one of those, a team in that buy of round 14 for our trading this week is probably like optimal, and I think ultimately what we're going to be doing. Dale did just enough. He's obviously playing quite well. He's getting the kick-ins as well. For 554, maybe we're considering him. If you don't have Dale, that's also a consideration. If I'm considering bringing these players in, that's a pretty much go for you to think about if you don't have them. Outside of that, the only other player is maybe Sinclair and Stewart, who, again, we're not seeing great things from. He's averaging under a ton. He's averaging under 87 for his 3 and 5 game, which is nuts. So we can either Stewart at 500 is an absolute bargain. If it was a Stewart we were getting last season, if we were getting similar numbers, I just don't think we are. And I'm very concerned that we're not going to see that type of Stewart. Because if we have a quick look at his stats from last year, he averaged 113. He was popping up really good numbers. He showed us his ceiling games of being able to go to 140s, 150s, and sitting around a few close to 120 pluses. Like, we've not seen any of that this season. None. We saw it in round 1. I'm fairly sure that's the only game where he's popped off. Round 1 and 2. Just squeezed through against the worst team in the side. And then when he comes up against tougher comps, he's got a 104. Like, there's just, at this look, it's not that bad because we know the ceiling that he can have. But we also are now realizing the floor. 84s, 104s. Now, this is somewhat, on some rounds, better than rookie scores. But if you're bringing someone in for a keeper, you want to see at least 90, 95 on average, at least, especially for a D6 position. So at this stage, if we look at our defensive options for trade-ins, we're looking at Naz, we're looking at Dale, or we're looking at bringing in Zach Reid. Zach Reid played really well in the VFL last week. That's not going to give me anything. Show me Reid. That's why. He played very well in the VFL. He's looking fit. He's looking like he's going to come bouncing back into the team. If he is named this week, we're pretty much going to commit to this trade option, which is we bring a rook into defense, sit him on the bench, we probably sit him on the bench, bring in Sexton, Field Sexton, and then we bring an upgrade in like Zorko or Raken into the forward line. If, however, Zach is not named, I don't want to really have to do much when it comes to. I'm uncertain about where we're sitting with how top 6 in defense. Lines of rock, we know that. It's like, who else is there? Who else is there? And there's not many people putting their hand up. Each has their risk and concerns. But again, ultimately, we're looking at Stewart and Ryan still. Naz has come up in conversation. Whitfield could be an option, but again, I'm very much against it. Dale could be an option. If he keeps his form, he's definitely looking in like a D6 position at least, which is interesting. So that's our defense. Forward. Now, we've been blessed with forward options this week. So I think most people, again, most traded in for the round in regards to Primos is Zorko. Break even of 45 coming up against Richmond, who are shocking. Just absolutely shocking. He's going to go up 35 ish. I expect him to hit more than he's projected. So I expect this to be more like 35, maybe even 40. If he goes over 600k, it will be the biggest fumble. I think he's going to play out the next 2 games. If he doesn't, that's real stiff. I doubt they're going to rest him before the bye, because that bye is going to be treated as a rest, especially for someone at 35 with his history. Again, like the needlework that's been done on Zorko apparently has been working wonders. And, if we have a look at his last few games, he's been doing really, really well. Now, mind you, 56, that was a role change. Before that, it was looking really, really good. And he seems to be locked back in that role, especially with all the injuries. Like, they're just throwing rooks at the field to fill those spots. And looks like he's just locked in that role. So he's got Richmond coming up, Hawthorn next, then a bye, then Bulldogs, then St Kilda. Then he's got West Coast again. He's West Coast for the first time, around 18. Then St Kilda again, 21. Like, he actually could do some really good things. So Zorko was a good option. Don't have him. I would probably recommend looking at him. If everyone's kind of taking that risk on him, it's a very well weighed risk to kind of take with the league. Rankin, I like his fixture more. Now, his first game up is against Collingwood. He could perform against them. He could not. This is the one where it's kind of like, you're bringing him in now for a cheaper price. Still, you're looking under 530, which is crazy. But then he's got West Coast, Hawthorn, and Richmond. It's this that is what I'm looking at buying him in for. You can wait a week. He could play absolutely horrible against Collingwood. And then just bring him in for around the same price you're bringing in Zorko this week, and go back-to-back upgrades on the forward line. And then kind of see how you go, which I think is probably the smart move. So if you're going to bring in any forward options, Heaney, I think we can wait on. I was very much contemplating bringing in Heaney this week, but he's got Carlton and he's got a relatively high break-even, 132. So he's either going to meet this, or he's going to ton up just and drop a little bit more, which means even next week we can look at bringing in Heaney. If we look at Rankin and we don't like what we see, it means we can lock in the F1, which is good. So I think now we're not entirely sure what our D6 is going to look like. We've got our midfield done, so we don't have to stress about that. Just our forward. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 rookie spots to fix. After this, we'll have 4, because we're going to bring in a primo at some point this week. Who it is, we just don't know. Again, if Reed is named to play, I'd be more enticed to upgrade the forward line. And if he's not, then we'll just bring in a Sullivan, or we'll bring in good old Brucey. I like Bruce, but his time on ground is a bit concerning. But the job security with the injuries at Brisbane, there's just different shift in weights and factors that come into why you're bringing in those rookies. Obviously, we got Richards for next week. Like, Richards is a really good down option, which makes me want to lean towards Bruce, because then that kind of evens up. We don't have this situation happening, because I want to avoid this again. I don't want to do it. So I think outside of forward options, Heaney, you wait a week. Zorko, you bring in. Rankin, you could bring in, but you could also wait a week. I have been looking at Cardwell. Very cheap. Very, very cheap. Averaging decently. Has potential to really, I don't know. I feel like he's going to break out. He's got North and Richmond next. They could have some really big games. Then he's got West Coast at 15 again. Then he's got Geelong. Then he's got Saints. And then he's got a bit of tougher fixture in there. You could take the risk on him. Again, at this stage, when you're bringing in trades, and this is what I'm trying to do myself, being a first year, an absolute rookie, is you want to be very buy conscious of your team. I think from what I've been able to picture and hear and see, is that the standard is you really don't want any more than 4 or 5 players out. You want to be able to field, obviously have some rookie cover or whatnot, but you really don't want any more than 4 primos out per buy round. So that's obviously why we've got the 3 trades per buy round, so you can kind of make that work. But yeah, so I think that's really it for the trading options for your teams. Let me know what you guys are going to be doing. I'm very curious to see what trades are happening, and if they're going to go Sullivan or Bruce. As mentioned, I'm probably going to lean into Bruce so I can pick up Richards next week. I think that's definitely the 2-week plan. Now, what our trade's going to look like if Reed is named is we're going to trade out Reed and we're going to trade out Howes. We're going to bring in the other Reed. So we're basically going to switch a Reed out for another Reed. Going to bring in Reed, and then we're going to look at bringing in Zorko, which will give us a little bit of cash to splash next week as well. So if we just go around on summary, bring in Zorko, give us about 100K to work with next week, which is good. And with this done, because we've already got more, we were already more last week. Hopefully you can kick it back up again. Then we've got 2 spots, 1, and then 2 here. So we've got 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've still got 5, which is interesting. It's looking a bit dire at the moment because we could have pulled the trigger on Ryan and locked in 1 spot in our defense, and then the rest would have been in our forward line. But I think more, again, we just played for value, and I think we're still playing for value because we could get Heaney in next week, which then means, Wilson slides into our F6 position, and then we're pretty much done. I'm pretty happy there because Wilson, if he maintains form, is just an absolute keeper. So then we focus on a backline, which then means we only have 2. So, yeah, if we're playing Wilson as a keeper, we've got 2, 3, 4. Not bad at all. Darcy hopefully goes up to about, what's his projected price rise? 19. If he can hit his projected, which he won't, he'll go up at probably, let's just say, worst case, 12K. So he gets just over 3,500. We can then potentially swing Closey up as well, which then, depending on where players sit, Stewart might turn it around, give us a really good game, then we bring in Stewart. Cool, done. If not, we hold and we bring in Heaney, or we bring in Rankin, or Cardwell. We just look elsewhere. So this is where we're currently looking. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just not confident in these trades. It could be the rookiness of my first year antics coming in to bite me in the ass of paying up top dollar for Merritt and Butters, which I've learnt my lesson. It's okay, guys. But that's basically it. I don't think there's anything more to go over. Yeah, this is not locked in by any means. This is what our thoughts are. We want Stewart, we have to pull the trigger before the team sheets are announced. So these trades will definitely be locked in last minute. So I will be probably doing a late night upload on Thursday for our trade updates based on team sheets. So anyway, let's not look at our projected because it's absolutely shocking. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you again for all the support. Any like, any comment, all subscribers, all that stuff is much appreciated. I love making this sort of content for you guys and look forward to doing the videos every fucking week, which is sick. And hopping on live streams with you guys, which is seeing a couple of you on like Set Abouts and all those other streams that come up with Damo, Supercoach Edge, all that sort of stuff. So it's a really, really cool community. I will say this every week because every week it surprises me that outside the Facebook groups and Facebook pages, which can be very toxic sometimes, you guys are absolutely fucking legends. So with that said, I will leave you guys to it. Let me know what your trades are this week, and I will see you for our final trade video on Thursday night.